And so I think many of us didn't pray for years because I thought it doesn't matter. It doesn't do anything anyway. Why would I do that? I'm not changing God's mind. And if anything, I wanted to pray so that I wanted to pray because I knew I was probably being bad. And so I needed to feel God's grace, i.e., feel like I was emotional enough to be forgiven for the bad things I had done, which then goes back to this comment I made a few times on this podcast, that the way I measured successful prayer was my emotional attachment to it, or a successful time in a worship service was my ecstatic experience towards it, because that meant that I felt God's grace in the sense that I felt forgiven. But even at that, again, it's not necessary because I already had God's grace. I already was forgiven. So I didn't need, that was just extra. That was so that I could like bring it down at least far enough so that I could feel it in my head or like through my eyes, like quite literally. And so that's how I used to pray. I used to pray because I wanted to feel the grace of God in feeling bad about the thing I had done. And that's what it meant. Like I prayed so that I could feel bad about my sinfulness. Not because I actually didn't want to be sinful. The like 30 minutes later, after I have my cry in the closet, I'm back to, oh, it does, like, it's not a big deal. I'm fine. I'll be okay. I'll just pray harder next time so I can feel more forgiven. So I didn't believe it actually did anything. It just accrued to the current state that was already on me, whatever that means. Whereas now, so if we don't see, if seeing grace as like an abundance of God's forgiveness, if seeing grace is merely that, I don't think that's right. There's this, and this is an again, I'm going to speak of the tradition I'm in. Like this Eastern picture of God's grace is the sun. Think of God like the sun. You have the rays that come from the sun are like God's grace. And why there's an emphasis on practices and their utility and their actual function, rather than making you feel bad, is to put you in the sun. Because I always thought, I go in my closet, I pray, or or not, and I'm just in the sun, even if it's raining outside. Because again, it was passive. Like I didn't have to do anything. The sun's just going to shine on me, and that's fine. But I can't, as much as I can't will from my molecular cells a tan to like darken my skin, I can't will God's grace hard enough in my life that it saves me. But what I can do is I can pray. I can fast. I can enter into silence. I can do practice. I can go to church. I can do practices that put me in the sun. And the more I'm in the sun, the more that I am exposed to the grace of God. And again, we know this the opposite way around. The less I do those things, the more I want it to rain. The less I want to be in the sun. And again, I'm just trying to bring this out because I used to pray because I wanted to feel bad about the things I had done, because I felt like I needed to feel God's forgiveness. Now I'm trying to, emphasis on trying, now I'm trying to pray so that I don't do those things anymore. Right. I used to pray so that I would feel bad about being lustful or watching porn. Now I pray so that I become the kind of person that doesn't want, as Penn Jillette talks about with his diet, doesn't want those things anymore. Where I used to think that me praying for that's just woo-woo, it's magic. Like that's not going to happen. That's reserved for other Christians, because that's not how God's grace works. But as a matter of fact, I think it is exactly how it works.